You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman, exclusively on ABC Amber TV.
Mutumbu, mama yo, na ya boy go get down. Blue Jay promise. Mama you kind, mama you're beautiful, mama you good, mama you're wonderful. No woman like you, mama. No woman like you, mama. Thank God for you, mama. Thank God for you, mama. 'Cause you gave me life, oh mama. Queen of my life, oh mama. I will love you for life, oh mama. 'Cause you love me so, oh mama. From small beginning, I never forget all the suffer when you suffer for me. Oh yeah, yeah. All the pain and the troubles where I put you through. I remember when money no be day and chop no be day for her. You be the try your best. You go run around to find us something where we go chop. When I dey sick, you know the sleep. You go the cry all night. You go hold me tight, start to pray, say God make you have my oh Lord. Ooh, I wo yeah yeah choma. I funga na better yeah funga choma. I'm bombing na better yeah bomb choma. Inga na chinum yeah ga choma. Mama, I wo yeah yeah choma. I funga na better yeah funga choma. I'm bombing na better yeah bomb choma. Inga na chinum yeah ga choma. Yeah ga choma, mama. Inga na chinum yeah ga choma. Chinum yeah ga choma. Oh, you gave me life, oh mama. Queen of my life, oh mama. I will love you for life, oh mama. 'Cause you love me so, oh mama. Ale mama, ale mama, ale mama, ale mama. You're my motivation. You gave me the best education, mama. The song where I sing I'm for you, now it's special dedication to you. Oh yeah. I know say every night and day you pray say make a mama. The God where you the pray I'm for heaven, don't give me this inspiration, mama. The song where I sing I'm for you, now to show my appreciation to you. Be a warrior, yeah, choma. I funga na better, yeah, funga choma. I'm bombing na better, yeah, bomb choma. Ingana chinum, yeah, ga choma. Mama, warrior, yeah, choma. I funga na better, yeah, funga choma. I'm bombing na better, yeah, bomb choma. Ingana chinum, yeah, ga choma. Chinum, yeah, ga choma. Chinum, yeah, ga choma. Chinum, yeah, ga choma. You gave me life, mama, queen of my life, queen of my life. I will love you for life. I will love you for life. 'Cause you love me so, mama. You gave mama, mama, queen of my life, mama. I will love you for life, mama. 'Cause you love me so, oh mama, mama. Ale mama, ale mama, ale mama, ale mama, ale mama.
Our vision in this interim government is to make APC a leader and a real warhorse of our struggle. We want to grow it, expand it, hire and train more hands, and broadcast round the clock, around the world, and take command of the media space of this world.
You can enjoy all round the clock 24/7 exclusive moments of bliss as an ABC Amber TV Club member. A cappella. Latest Nigerian/African movies, global politics, ABC Amber News and updates, historical documentaries, and lots more. In our daily programs, we have Undaunted, ABC Amber News, bringing into the news untold stories with Onyi Okpala and Star Smart. Exclusive discussion, revolutionary panel conversation, infotainment, edutainment, inter-intro-governmental debates on topical issues with Tar Paddy King, State of the Liberation Movement, Fronting IG and People of Ambazonia's position, the Struggles Weekly Update with Secretary Martin Mungwa, PhD, FASC. Health is Wealth, Health Education and Awareness within the Ambazonian Community with Dr. Yaya. Liberation Prayer, an intercessory ministry for Ambazonia with Pastor Victor Mba. Our Freedom, Spiritual Awareness and Education for the Ambazonian Community with Pastor Victor Mba and Pastor Commando. Church and Politics, neutralizing the myths and preconceived religious and political philosophies that limit the Christian involvement in the realms of decent politics with Pastor Commando. The Horizon, the voice of the Ambazonian woman with Dr. Patience Abiedo and Lady Casey. Our Amber History, bringing to limelight the hidden history of Ambazonia to the world with Pastor Commando. Appointment on community building, education on patriotism within the Ambazonian communities with Ma Rachel Itatima. Ethics for an Emerging Nation, watchdog of basic principles and morals of a nation at war with Ma Dorothy Ngwa. Upcoming programs: Pigeon News, Vernacular Talk Show, County Roots, Activists Corner, Amber Focus, only on ABC Amber Television. We the people, the voice of the voiceless. For 24/7 access, subscribe as a club member on www.abcambertv.com/subscribe.
Welcome to The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman. This is my Patience Abiedu, the host today, and we have a great show for you today. I want to begin by greeting everyone watching, those from the diaspora, those watching from home front, those watching from neighboring La République du Cameroon, those watching from our refugee camps in Nigeria, and those watching from other states, countries in Africa. I welcome you to this show. I also want to extend special greetings to our Ambazonia Restoration Forces for doing the fantastic job in defending our homeland. This month, May, is Mental Awareness Month. And because mental health is extremely important, the Department of Women's Services has brought in an expert on mental health to share with everyone watching. It doesn't matter whether you are a believer in our struggle, in our quest for recognition. It doesn't matter whether you're on the fence. It doesn't matter whether you live in La République du Cameroon. It doesn't matter whether you're a Francophone. It doesn't matter who you are. This is a health topic that affects every single body, every single one of us. And so we are pleased to have an expert today to talk about this topic. Please have your questions ready. We'll have a point after the presentation for you to call in with questions. Secondly, we also have a surprise addition to our guest list. You all know our popular Dr. Yaya. She saw the topic and decided to join at the last minute. So she also will be here to give her own views on the topic. But without further ado, I want to, at this moment, invite our guest. But before I do so, I want to introduce her on the show. This is Dr. Ethel Biba, And I want to just give a brief introduction on her or about her. Dr. Ethel Biba is a mother, she is a sister, a friend, she is a mental health professional, an advocate, an educator. She's also a life coach, a person of faith, and a lover of men. Thank you, Dr. Biba, for being on the horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Mape. It's a pleasure, it's an honor, it's a blessing to join you today. And I'm excited because May, as you certainly stated, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it is huge. Thumbs up, kudos to you for being the voice of mental health, because we need to address mental health. We cannot shy away from mental health. We have to have a voice to mental health. So thank you so much for inviting me. I am excited to be a part of your show today. Thank you.
Wonderful. My pleasure. The pleasure is all mine. This program really runs for about an hour. And then after that, we have some other political talks to talk about, which you'll probably be gone when we go on those topics. But I didn't want to limit it on just asking you questions. Since you are a professional, you have a presentation to give us. And then after your presentation, we'll ask questions. I think that's the best way, because I was afraid that if I limit it to questions, I may not shine some pertinent issues that you would love to talk about. So please, the spotlight is on you now. Please give us a presentation on mental health.
Okay, thank you so much. So before we start, everyone grab your cup. You see, I have a cup of tea because it just helps you to relax. We're going to have a conversation. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to talk about some things that are difficult to talk about, but necessary. You know, we had COVID, and even in our own diaspora was struggling with displacement, with stress, with war, with maiming, with killing, with marginalization, minimalization. And before we even talk about thriving, we have to talk about survival. To be able to survive in chaotic times, we must address our mental well-being. There's no way we can shy away from it, because any kind of stress, good or bad, it could be good stress, planning a wedding, planning the graduation of a child, or it could be stress from, the pressure of economics, of politics, of, healthcare, of education, whatever stress that is, it affects our mental well-being. So we have to have this conversation. There is depression, there is anxiety, there is grief, any kind of loss, whether it's a loss of autonomy, loss of our homes. We have parents who have had to leave their homes. They built their homes with the intentions of retiring and living in their homes and enjoying the pleasure of having a community. And now they've been removed from their homes. So that's a loss. The loss of family members, the loss of a child, the loss of a parent, the dynamics of a family being torn apart, one person leaving and then, having to be separated from a husband or a wife or a child. All of those are losses. Loss of our faith community, loss of our friendships. All these losses can cause great stress. And so there is depression. We'll start with depression. And I'm just going to give us, highlights. Depression can affect up to 270 million people in the world. You think about it, 270 million people are affected by depression. And sometimes we think depression is just sadness. Oh, you're just sad, shake it off. But there is so much more to depression. It is a great source of disability. You're incapacitated. You cannot go to work. You cannot be your best self. You cannot function. Why? Because your brain is just at a point where it's stuck. Not just sadness, but feeling stuck, having fluctuations in our sleep, can I pause and just say this? The greatest source of mental distress is lack of rest. How can you rest when everything around you is noisy, it's chaotic, it's problematic? The news itself is depressing. There is bad news all day long. Blink your eye, this one is gone. And then the next thing, this one has been kidnapped. And then the next thing, this one is killed. You feel hopeless. You feel helpless. Even from a distance, from a faraway country, you feel helpless and hopeless because when it affects your people, it affects you. You have difficulty concentrating, difficulty focusing, headaches, forgetfulness, just low energy, lack of motivation. And it is said that, especially for us Africans, do we know that the most depression and anxiety has been found in African countries? Strangely enough, we are the ones who do not want to talk about it. However, when we don't talk about it, it still affects and plagues us. So we have to give it a voice. It is problematic. And then there is anxiety. Right now, we can even talk about acute stress disorder. Anytime you're in the middle of a stressful event and you start to have certain symptoms, which we will mention here, for 1 month or greater, there is a diagnosis of acute stress disorder. And then longer than 1 month, post-traumatic stress disorder. And what are those symptoms? Nervousness, palpitation. Oh, you hear your child even opens the door brashly. Boom. Your heart starts to race, you're sweating, you're anxious, everything makes you irritated, everything makes you annoyed. How can we even build community, or how can families be strong when our attitudes are in jeopardy? The least thing someone says to you, you want to bite them. Legitimately so, because we're in the midst of chaos and it is difficult, very difficult. So then most of us at one point or another deal with acute stress disorder, because this classification of a diagnosis is if you've struggled with nervousness, palpitation, sense of doom, shortness of breath, sweating for greater than a month. And then when it transcends a month, it's post-traumatic stress disorder, which also includes nightmares, night terrors. You've been in a stressful situation, in a war-torn zone. You've been removed from your place of stability for so long that it affects your psyche. You go to bed and you wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, palpitations, bad dream. Sometimes even in the daytime, people have what they call they have flashbacks. The memory of what happened is recurrent and seems as if it's actually happening at that time. And people are truly struggling and suffering. Post-traumatic stress disorder. And then there is grief and loss. And the mental community talks about the 5 stages of grief. Huge. Grief and loss. And all these things, beloved, affects our central nervous system, our way of thinking, our thinking paradigm. It can cause us to start. See, I have a great friend. We do presentations together and we do mental health education together. And she actually suffered with bipolar. She told me, she said, Ethel, I did not know my thinking was bad until I started to think right. So there is wrong thinking and there's right thinking. And sometimes you don't even know you're thinking wrong until you get the help you need. You find solutions. You find ways of relieving stress. And then you start to realize those decisions I made last year, 2 years ago, were poor decisions because of my thinking paradigm. And even high blood pressure. Have you ever heard a person say, oh, you're making my blood pressure go up? Stress. Stress can cause high blood pressure. We look at our children. If they're suffering as parents, we're stressed. And then next thing you know, I even have a cousin who died at Mbingo Hospital from hypertension. And do you know he was only in his 30s? And it was associated to great amounts of stress, difficulty with digestion. You're either, you hear people say, oh, I heard bad news. I had to run to the bathroom, Poch Bele. Why? Because Stress affects our digestive system. It affects our breathing. People end up in the hospital with asthma from just stress. You hear something stressful, you start to have palpitation, your breathing is affected, and then next thing you know, you're hospitalized. Why? Because your oxygenation, you're breathing in oxygen, leading out carbon dioxide. And if you're not doing it in the proper rate and rhythm, you end up storing carbon dioxide, which leads to breathing problems. So it is important that we address mental health because it is vital. And if you think about the stages of grief, there's denial. Most of us are in denial. We're still like, what? Did this happen? And then there is anger, great anger. We're just angry because how come? How are we the victims of loss? And then we're bargaining, feeling like, okay, maybe if I did this, this wouldn't have happened. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe it's not my fault. Maybe it's their fault. And then there is depression and acceptance. And all those stages can come at different rates and rhythms. So you can start with acceptance, then you go to denial, then you go to depression, then you go back to denial, then you go back to depression. And we have to be our brother's keeper in one way or another. And even before we talk about, just abuse and addiction, let's take a pause and think about how we as a people have been affected, especially our children. I'm a mother, so I have a heart for children. It is said that children in areas that have suffered conflict are psychologically torn, psychologically beaten down, and need us as a people, need resources to be able to promote positive psychological development and mental well-being. Because you know why? They've been deprived of their basic needs. Some are even deprived of just the basic need of going to the toilet, the basic need of toothpaste and toothbrush, the basic need of a daily meal, security, safety. And so we have to go back and think, how can you and I be of assistance? Because it's not just talking about mental health. It's fixing the problem in small ways, in the midst of the chaos and outside of the chaos, in small ways, just providing that comfort, providing basic needs, providing, being a safe space where people can complain. In our society, when people say they have depression, we start to shun them. But being that open, safe space where someone can come and tell you, right now, because of what I've observed, because of what I've experienced, because of what I've seen, I feel like I can't take one more day. I feel like my life is in jeopardy. I feel like I am sad. I am crying all the time. I can't stop crying. I cannot sleep. My appetite is affected. I'm even abusing alcohol just to cause my pain to be subsided. A lot of addiction is because of great pain. People are hurting. They want a solution. They don't know where to find a solution. So they find the solution in the bottle, in drugs. A lot of our secondary schools back home, we hear nowadays, are struggling with drug addiction. And you wonder why. People are hurting. They just need to feel better. And in effort to feel better, people will find things that will make them feel better. And sometimes they think the solution is drugs. They think the solution is alcohol. They actually resort to these things. Families are being torn. And, if a child wakes up and their mother and their father, who is those are the people to protect them, to give them shelter and comfort, they're taken away from them. How do you think they feel? It is heart-wrenching. And one of the best ways to resolve this issue is to have honest conversations. We cannot shy away from talking about it, having honest conversations, bringing to the platform, to the forefront, the problem. Sometimes, even when we don't have a solution, we still need to talk about the problem, because in talking, in dialogue, we will find a pathway. In dialogue, we will find a trail where we can become trailblazers. And even in failing, we find our answers. So we have to talk about these things. We have to talk about it. If we look at places like Rwanda, South Africa, some of them are still struggling, but some of them are making strides. And you can say, okay, they've exited their trouble and now they're finding paths. But even in the midst of our chaos, there is still a way. Even where there seems to be no way, there is still a way. So let's be advocates for our mental well being. Because if we're not mentally sound, we cannot even bring health, wholeness, healing, solutions, resolution to our problems. We have to be whole.
Wow.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Doc. I'm going to then go to specifics now, but before I do that, I just want to read this information from the World Health Organization. It says, in recent years, there has been increasing acknowledgement of the important role mental health plays in achieving global development goals, as illustrated by the inclusion of mental health in the Sustainable Development Goals. Depression is one of the leading causes of disability. Suicide is the fourth leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-old people. People with severe mental health conditions die prematurely, as much as 2 decades early, due to preventable physical conditions. Despite progress in some countries, people with mental health conditions often experience severe human rights violations, discrimination, and stigma. Many mental health conditions can be effectively treated at relatively low cost, yet the gap between people needing care and those with access to care remains substantial. Effective treatment coverage remains extremely low. So, I want us to go to some specifics now, Doc. You've covered a lot in your general presentation, but let's take a little bit one topic at a time. Let's talk about our children. I just read a section that said 15 years to 29 years old, suicide is a leading cause of death. Let's talk about depression and suicide, specifically how it relates to the young people and maybe some elderly people also.
Okay. So thank you so much. And very much so. Very much so. And I think recent statistics even says that it's the second leading cause of death in that population, because post COVID and even post many of the problems in the world right now, and even in the midst of current problems in the world, it is being realized that suicide has become the second leading cause, one of the recent research unveiled. And it is really sad. I think that aside from our communities lacking that strength of togetherness, there is also a decrease in resilience. And the decrease in resilience comes greatly with the stigma attached to it. There is a huge stigma attached to mental health, especially depression, which causes people, it is said that it takes about 4 years for women to even voice that they have been struggling with symptoms of depression. How much more men? Women are more vocal. If it takes up to 4 years of struggle for a woman to finally come to the forefront and say, I am struggling, and only 50% of people with depression have been diagnosed. It is said that over 50%, or at least 50%, go undiagnosed. Suddenly you hear a person took their lives and you're wondering, oh, they were fine. They were just fine yesterday. They were faking it because society says you have to fake it. Oh, you have to be strong. Oh, you have to put up a strong front. And yeah, it is good to be strong, but it's not good to be strong all the time. And also, the civilization has caused us to feel so isolated that we no longer utilize the resources that we have, the people that we have, the community that we have, the friendships that we have. You feel like, okay, I have friends on Facebook. I have friends on Twitter. They're called friends. You know, they like what you post or they give you a thumbs up. And then our children, our people become isolated. We get caught up in the rat race of work, 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 no life, no downtime, to the point where when we sit with ourselves, we crash, and then we start to think about all our problems. And then we feel like there's no way out. I need an exit route. Everyone around me is struggling because I'm down. So let me just end it by taking my life. And that is the mindset we talked about when we said thinking right and thinking wrong. Depression can cause us to think that the only solution is to end it all. But if we can just start to process ourselves, what will my children do? How is my mother going to feel if I'm gone? Or even recently in the United States, where we've heard about men killing their wives, even people, Africans actually killing their wives. Sometimes it's a matter of just sitting and thinking, this woman has a family. What is this woman's family going to think of? Or as a young person, maybe I came from my country to another country, and the struggle of acclimating to different kinds of foods, different kinds of maybe just a different accent. You know, now I come from the comfort of everything being provided for me to paying some of my bills, going to school and working. All of that stress can be very, very traumatic. It can even cause us to feel like, oh no, there's no way out. My parents sent me to succeed. If I'm a failure, let me just end it all. So, as it is often said, perspective is key. And the way we change our perspective is by hearing. Even the good book says faith comes by hearing, and hearing what? The word. When you start to hear through conversation that you matter, that, you know, even though you struggled, someone else struggled last year, and we have to be honest about our process. Some of us have it looking like we have it all together, and that person down the street who is struggling, they are just lost. They should not even associate with us. When it took 10 years for us to get to where we're at, but we're not honest about our process. We need to start telling our children, I came here, I struggled, and my people are struggling. This is what is going on. When you struggle and you fail, you can rise up again and try again. Because if we don't have those conversations, people will think those who are at the top made it overnight. They don't understand failure. So because I'm failing, I'm a loser. And loser equals no good. And no good equals not worthy to be here. And when we start to feel worthless, which is part of the constellation of the symptoms of depression, then we want to end it all, which is rather unfortunate. So destigmatizing and having honest conversations, even in a society where there are no mental health professionals, if we start to talk about these things and speak our truth, we will find solutions, because it is part of therapy, and therapy is one of the greatest ways of treating depression. In talking, we find out that, oh, yesterday I was thinking this way, maybe my thinking pattern is wrong and I need to change how I'm thinking. Or maybe I felt hopeless. Maybe there is hope, but it is found in conversation.
Wow. Doc, you know that, I'm a pharmacist by profession. And as a pharmacist, most of the medications that we dispense to our customers, to our patients, most of them are medications to deal with mental health. Most of them, I'm telling you that most of the medications we dispense in the pharmacy are medications to deal with mental health. That tells you how important mental health is. And you're so right that when I look at the patients coming for treatment, I've worked in both areas that are predominantly white neighborhood and areas that are predominantly black neighborhoods. I will tell you that in the areas that are predominantly black neighborhoods, you rarely see people coming for medications for mental health. But the areas that are predominantly white neighborhood, they come to get their medications. They come and demand if they don't have refills, and they are upset that you're depriving them of their medications. I see this because most of us that are of African American descent, we do not talk about this issue. It's a stigma, as you've already said it, but we need to talk about it in our homes. We need not to be shy to go for treatment. So, for those who are watching in areas of the world that do not have access to medications, what are the coping mechanisms? How can they take care of themselves? Because not everybody has access to a doctor who will prescribe a medication. And we know that you already started by saying that there's healthy stress and there's unhealthy stress. We don't have to be medicated for anything that has to do with stress. If I'm planning a wedding and I'm planning a graduation, that is healthy stress. I will deal with it. But if there's something going on in my life that makes me cry every day, that makes me not able to sleep, that is unhealthy stress. How do we cope with those stresses without medication?
Thank you. And that's a great question. So, the interesting thing that I'm finding out, like we established conversation, because in therapy, which is, if you look at research, the top way of treating, especially depression and anxiety, is therapy, psychotherapy. Therapy helps you unpack what you're going through, why you're going through it, and how to navigate out of it. Conversations with people who care about you, who will not judge you, who will not condemn you, is very vital. Finding ways of, putting words, because what we don't acknowledge, we cannot conquer. First, we have to acknowledge what we're dealing with and putting words to, I am really feeling sad. I cannot sleep at night. I have been crying. In January, I went to a medical mission in Ghana. And that was the first time. This is the 10th year that mission has operated, but it was the first time that they had a mental health professional. I am a prescriber, so I prescribe those medicines, and I thank you for dispensing them for us because our people need it. But we went to Ghana, and it was the first year that they had a mental health prescriber. And so we were just thinking, oh, maybe and even if I don't have anyone in the mental health community, I could still treat people with just general medicine. But lo and behold, we had a lot of people who came every day. We had over 1,000 people who came and over 10 prescribers. And let me tell you, a lot of them were just enthused to find out that a daughter of the soil of the African, diaspora was willing to not only address mental health, but treat mental health. And we found out that people have been dealing with depression, anxiety, sleep deprivation for many years. And there's a simple medicine called Elavil, amitriptyline. It is available even in Cameroon, in Ghana, in Togo, and it does a lot. Just a small dose from the pharmacy is able to treat depression, even psychosomatic pain that comes with depression, general pain, anxiety, sleep deprivation, just that one pill. And that was the only medicine we prescribed for majority of the people. And this is May. We have had great results. We've had people who have, given testimonies of how they feel so much better. They're sleeping better. Their appetite is better. They are able to care for their children. Widows who had lost their husbands, just saying, oh, I am able to wake up in the morning and do what I need to do. I had lost my enthusiasm. I lacked resolve for anything, and now I'm able to operate, because daily function is the thing that we lose when we're depressed, down and in the dumps. But they're able to function on a daily basis, take a shower, brush their teeth, be a part of their community and their society. So number one, talking to people who care. Sometimes even if they don't have the answers, just having a listening ear, someone to hear you out, admitting, this is how I'm feeling. Because without admittance, there is no resolution. You can't even conquer what you don't admit. I can't say it enough. You have to admit. And even sometimes just taking deep breath. pausing, taking deep breaths. And for those who can writing, just writing down, this is how I feel, this is why I feel, this is what happened. We don't like to write, but writing can be very therapeutic. And if you don't know how to write, most of us have smartphones. Pick up your smartphone, record. When you record, listen to yourself. Using your mouth and your ear to hear what you said can get you to thinking, oh, wait a minute. I said this. This is how I was feeling. Well, I wonder why I'm feeling this way. And what can I do about it? Those are some small ways to start to help ourselves in the process of it.
Awesome. Awesome. I hope our people are learning from this. You also talked about acute stress disorder that eventually becomes post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. I think that is another topic that I would like you to address, because this affects a lot of our people. Or by the time we really actualize our freedom, a lot of people will be suffering from PTSD. Please go ahead and talk a little bit about post-traumatic stress disorder and what we can do right now to alleviate their symptoms or to help them a little bit.
All right. And that is so true. Post-traumatic stress disorder is huge. Anytime there is conflict, there is chaos, there is, stress, intense stress to the degree that some of our people are experiencing, and even some of us are experiencing, there will be some kind of a traumatic stress. Trauma is anything that you experience that hits you upside the head so hard that you feel like you're going to lose your mind. And some of our children, our fathers, our mothers have experienced, they've seen things that they never thought in their lives they would see. They've heard things, they've experienced things that are very traumatic. And some of the symptoms, like we already established, having palpitations, you hear the least noise, boom, you're very anxious, nervous, you can't even be in public. Some feel sick to their stomach, nausea, you eat, you run to the bathroom, chest pain, headache. My daughter suffered from what you call irritable bowel syndrome. She experienced a little bit of stress, and it caused her to start having diarrhea one day, constipation the next day. She eats something, she runs to the bathroom, or then another time she's having constipation. We went from doctor to doctor, and they finally discovered it was induced by stress. So stress can affect our digestive system, like we've said, breathing difficulties, and then there's the nightmares, and you have difficulty sleeping, then you cannot sleep, you have mood swings, then you have irritability, you cannot function, you cannot be a parent, you cannot be a brother, a sister, or a child. Some of the ways to alleviate this is taking, literally breathing, like deep breaths. Let me tell you, they are very vital. Taking a pause every few minutes and taking deep breaths. Limiting the amount of negativity that comes through your eyes, your ears, not watching things that are super negative, that will cause you to feel overly stressed even more. And sometimes surrounding ourselves with people who care. It is important, even if it's just one person. Sometimes you just need to know that one person is in your corner. It could be Dr. Mape on this station, who brings you information and encourages you. It could be that child who gives you a hug every day. Whomever it is, find one person that truly cares and remind yourself that you matter, that they care. And then celebrating small wins. If you slept 2 hours yesterday and then today you slept 3 hours, wake up and actually celebrate. Tell yourself, there is progress. What do we like? Is it music? Is it reading? Is it watching an encouraging show? Is it listening to a preacher? Filling our space with what we like. Those are some of the ways of alleviating stress. Deep breaths, taking a walk. When it's safe, of course, you don't want to take a walk in an unsafe zone. Taking a walk where it's safe, and when it's safe, filling our space with music, with laughter, even when it's hard to laugh, filling our space with conversation, eating, good food, even if it's just fufu and jama jama, or just red, plantains with red oil, just enjoying every bite of that food. Being present in the moment is also okay. They call it key. They call it mindfulness. If I'm having a conversation with you, I'm here with you. I'm not all over. And sometimes I have to pinch myself to remind myself I'm here, I'm present, everything around me. My kids could be making noise upstairs, but I am right here, present in this space at this moment. Being mindful and being present, it helps us to start to focus and think and to slow down our thoughts and alleviate stress.
Wow, that is a lot of resource for us to really utilize. Just simple things, just simple things. And we when we grew up, I don't know about you, um, we were not really in touch with things like this. I say this because I now have a family, I have a daughter, I have children that are more expressive, that they will say that, you know, this makes me sad or this makes me upset. But we didn't talk like that. We just went on doing things. And some of us were depressed and we didn't know that. We're living anxious life. We didn't know that. But now that the stigma is out for most of us, we now understand exactly what all those illnesses mean. Um, Anxiety. How should people react to anxiety? I know sometimes it's a normal thing in life to be anxious when you have an exam coming up for students, or when you have to plan an occasion, or if you have a medical problem that you're not sure what the solution is, you'll be anxious. But how do you deal with anxiety in a healthy way and to prevent it from being something that destabilizes you?
Very great question. Because, I think that everyone to a degree has dealt with anxiety. Every last one of us. Now, the extent of the anxiety, the persistence of the anxiety, and how it affects our daily functioning becomes the problem. So, anxiety sometimes is a good thing, like to a small extent, because they say all those, hormones, that the secretions of the, the endorphins and all of that can help our brain. But now, when you start to secrete cortisol for a long period of time, it can affect your whole system, your endocrine system, your processing, and your mental well-being, which is why persistent anxiety becomes a huge problem. Now, with anxiety, there are several responses. It's either fight back, flight, run away, or freeze. Now, sometimes the fight back, we fight and we fight ourselves, we fight the people that we love. Sometimes the flight, we run away from the things that we should address. And sometimes we freeze and we become debilitated and incapacitated, which is why anxiety can be debilitating. It can cause debilitation. So, slowing down our brain in today's society is a huge, huge problem. But we have to learn to do what I call declutter. We mentioned writing. Sometimes we have, what they call flights of ideas. I want to do this. I want to go here. I want to be this. And then this one. Or racing thoughts. So many thoughts going through. Sometimes even the people that I treat tell me it's hard for me as a person to know my own thoughts. And I ask them why. And then they say, my brain is running so fast, I don't even know which one is my thought and which one is not my thought. Can you imagine when you have so many thoughts because you're so anxious and so nervous that you don't know which one is your thought? And then sometimes it just causes a person to start crying, feeling irritated. But we have to learn to declutter and offload our head and our hearts. This decreases emotional pressure. Offloading our head offloading our hearts, it decreases emotional pressure. How? Sitting with ourselves, writing, 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 or even dictating. If you cannot write, because some of our parents don't know how to write, that's fine. But just talking, they say to talk to yourself is crazy. I say no. I like to talk to myself because that's how I process my thoughts. I'll sit and say, okay, Ethel, you have to do this and you have to do this. Which one do you do first and which one do you do last? Giving ourselves grace. Sometimes pat yourself in the back and say it's going to be okay. We don't always need someone to pat us on the shoulder. You can pat your own self. Give yourself grace, grace to make mistakes, grace to feel anxious and to acknowledge that you feel anxious, and then sit with the feeling and say, okay, what do I need to do? And having an accountability partner, engaging someone, whether it's a neighbor, a sister, a friend, we have to engage someone in our journey. Who is our support system? Who is your support system? Who is my support system? We have to be each other's keeper. When we find a good support system, it helps to alleviate stress and anxiety. We have to address these emotions. How? By asking questions. What questions? Why am I feeling this way? Because when you start to ask yourself questions, you will find your own answer. It's called coaching. I'm a life coach. All we do is ask questions and people tell us their own answers. We don't give answers in coaching. So coach yourself by asking questions. Why am I feeling this way? What triggered this feeling? What do I need to do? Do I just need a cup of water? Let me drink cold, like they say back home, drink cold water, rest. Maybe I just need rest. I just need a cup of water. I just need to declutter. But decluttering our minds and our hearts is very important. What is that thing in your heart that is causing you to be afraid to go outside of your door and be in public? What is it that is causing you to sleep at night and feel like your heart is racing and your head is running? Let's not just sit with the feeling. Let's ask ourselves the question, why am I feeling this way? What do I need to do? And as thoughts begin to come to our heads, let's write it down. Let's talk it out. Let's feel they say feel it to heal it. We run away from the feeling, but when we start to feel the feeling, we can heal the feeling. So let's start to feel so we can heal.
Wow,
Thank you.
Doc, thank you so much. You the way you're expressing this thing is for everybody to understand. You're giving us ideas that everyone can put to use, and this is really great information. Dr. Yaya is on. That's one of our doctors in our struggle, our quest for liberation. She saw the topic and she said, "Oh, I am so thankful, Mappy, that you brought this on during this month." Which is May of Mental Health Awareness Month, and thankful that you got an expert to talk on this, that I would like to join and share a few things. But before I have you speak, Dr. Yaya, I just wanted to also bring this, and you already talked about it, some of the poor coping mechanisms that we use, getting into addictions, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, food addiction, even sex addiction. Those are all negative ways of trying to cope with the depression, with anxiety, and the like. But Dr. Yaya, go ahead and greet the people and then give us a few of your thoughts. I'm sure you have a lot. Welcome on the horizon. And you look great.
Oh, thank you, Mape, with my poor lighting, but it's just important being here with such great ladies. Hello, Dr. Biba. I saw the flyer. I was quite excited because, as we know, mental health is one aspect of the entire health spectrum that is being, well, should I say, first of all, under recognized, and, it goes under the carpet, despite the fact that, our physical health in most of the times is actually a reflection or an expression of our mental state. So I was very pleased to see that Mape, who is a multitasker in our struggle, brought this up. So yeah, sorry I came in a bit late and I heard all the, the great and professional, approach and advice or insight that you brought in. So I'm not entirely sure where I should step in. Mape, I'm not sure if I got a specific question, but what should I really say?
Is
I think my, yeah,
No, I wanted to say, is there anything that you want? I'm sure you have your own insight about this topic. Anything
yeah.
that you would love to address?
Oh, definitely. I think, and I'll limit it, not being a specialist in that area, and of course, respecting the fact that we have a specialist on board. I'm probably going to talk more on the psychological aftermath of our liberation struggle and how that affects us in the course of it and the long term, possible long term effects that Dr. Bieber can probably throw more as a specialist insight into. The starting with simple things. I think she mentioned. I came in when she was talking about anxiety and depression. Even in a normal world, more than 50% of people you see, or at least patients that come to the hospital with different physical symptoms or problems, they actually have an underlying psychiatric disorder of sort. It may be mild, of different spectrums, from simple anxieties that are acceptable as actually, you need a bit of adrenaline to carry on with life, to the extremes where it becomes debilitating, where you can't, function. So it is really, really important that we have this in consideration, particularly concerning our struggle, of course. We have an additional stressor. Already, life in itself has many challenges, be it our own personal lives, our health, stress at work, just the whole threat, existential threat. And nowadays, in the world of today, even those who are apparently affluent, we still have this concern about what's going to happen tomorrow. Oh, is there going to be a breakout of the Third World War? What's that going to mean to our sustenance and sustainability? So we have all of this. And then on top of that, we have the struggle. Uh, and we see those horrendous pictures of children being killed, children being fried in oil, things that are unheard of, such extremes of barbarism, people's heads being chopped off, no matter what side of the bar, seeing blood spill, for probably a good reason, but an on what do you say, inhumane way, which is not what Ambazonia bargained for. Of course, Ambazonia wants the adversary to come to table so that we have a fair negotiation. So going through all these things, none of us chose to have this. Pregnant women, delivering, having what do you call it, miscarriages, or babies being born in strange situations, dying because there's just no medical attention. You know, I mean, the trauma is way too much. Mothers seeing their children being killed in front of them who did practically nothing, or mothers actually burying their own children or burying their husbands. The range of the trauma is much. IDPs, internally displaced persons, moving from one place to another, unsure about tomorrow, whether they'll be alive, landing themselves in strange places, and becoming vulnerable persons, vulnerable to rape, to killing, to all kinds of crimes. You name them. Our refugees, people dying of hunger, kids dying just because they don't have simple sugar and salt. Their parents don't have that to prepare oral rehydration fluid. So we're dealing with all these things. I think at some point, I remember at the start of this struggle, um, even till now, I can still watch some pictures. In fact, I just follow commentaries and I assume what is taking place. In a way, it's just a coping mechanism for me because, like Dr. Beaver said, you have to leave. You have to be honest to your feelings. You must accept that you feel bad and that you're in pain before, in fact, acknowledging and recognizing that there's a problem is the first step to solving that problem. But somehow, because there's what we see in our struggle is just the barbarism we see from La Republic is extreme. We sort of have to also guard ourselves so that we don't get too emotionally drained to the point where we freeze because we want to be able to function. Mape, you know me, I don't know if I'm getting out of hand, but
No.
I just want us to be conscious, particularly in the struggle, and especially those of us in the diaspora. We are going through a lot of pain and torture. Sorry, I didn't mean to say particularly the diaspora. Of course, those on the home front, those who are actually bearing the brunt of this war, those who see bullets, who take the bullet. We can talk from a distance. That's a different level, but still, we still go through some psychological things. So we need to be aware of these things. And our liberation fighters, they are going through all this, just every soldier in the world. We know that even in the Western world, and that's why every nation gives honors its veterans, and they make sure that they have mental health screening on a regular basis. Unfortunately, we don't have a country yet, and God knows what is going through the minds of some of our soldiers who are doing an honorable thing to defend motherland. But at the end of the day, they are dealing with this personal trauma, and a lot of them end up with these pictures revisiting them, whether they were victims or they were perpetrators themselves in the aim of self-defense. It is still traumatic to think that somebody's head was chopped off, or my leg is chopped off, or a child was killed in front of me, or a pregnant woman was her belly was cut open. I mean, these
Yeah.
pictures are horrendous. So so we should be prepared to have a nation which needs a lot of healing. And bless God that we have people like Dr. Bieber, and we should already start doing that now, raising that awareness. Because be it the soldiers, be it their immediate families, think of all the young widows that we have. Think of all the orphans that we have. Think of all the elderly persons who have lost their carers, to this stupid, senseless war. So we have all those levels that we need to deal with long term, but short term, some people just don't even cope. Some people find themselves, thinking of actually taking away their lives at the very extreme. And so,
Yeah.
for those of us in the diaspora, I think we are just blessed to be here. We feel the pain of those at the home front, but we cannot really we can't really express what they go through. And I think our own position should be more that of education, raising awareness at the level of our LGAs, at the level of our counties, so that those who deal with our soldiers, the defense officers, they can actually teach them, tell them about the existence of such things. Because sometimes we have some unruliness that we may see, and we just say, oh, this person has been bought over by La Republique or this and that. But apparently, it could just be an expression of an outbreak or a nervous breakdown of sort. But they have no one to talk to, they have no one to counsel them, and they have no one to even just start with feeding. Imagine you're going through all this psychological torture and pain, and on top of that, you don't even have food to eat. You don't have water to drink. You don't have shelter on you. So these people are going through a lot. And we are pleading to everybody, uh, just every human being of conscience who is distant from this struggle, to really take a look at it. There are so many people who are suffering, who are actually innocent people. They are neither fighters nor even part of the revolution. I'm talking about vulnerable groups like children, young women, and they need our help, just to feed them, provide them with basic needs. And if we can have, little groups or people organizing themselves to have some form of a little counseling, to just reach out sometimes to certain populations. And I think we've done that before in the HSS with our refugees, especially when they go through issues like losses, deaths, and so on. We used to have a counseling team that reaches out to them just to say, "Hey, we cannot solve your problem, but we are there. We care for you." And for those of us in the diaspora, we need to reach out and support those who are actually more in need. Thank you. Sorry, I stretched too much.
No, you did not. You brought you related it to what is happening in the home front so vividly. Dr. Biba, I'm sure you have something to add to all this, because she's really said a lot of things that you'll really bring the professional view on how to address. You've already done some of it, but I'm sure you want to say a word or two about what she just said.
Legitimately so, and thank you, because the reality is what it is, and we cannot shy away from the truth that war of any kind, chaos of any kind, destroys communities. It destroys families. It disrupts development. It causes poverty rate to go up. How can you even tell a person you care when you can't even give them plain clean water to drink? Just the basic necessities of everyday life, water, just water, or even just a meal. And these are people who probably could sustain themselves, and now they don't even have the right to access their own facilities because of something that they have no control over. It is psychologically devastating, emotionally, mentally, and I read a research once that said death as a result of war is simply a tip of the iceberg. A tip of the iceberg. There are consequences beside death, documented, things like poverty. We cannot deny the fact that mental illness escalates in the midst of situations like this, which is why, she ties it to the home front, and it makes sense. It escalates due to the reality of what we're facing. And even if we cannot be there to just comfort people and say, Ashia, we can start saying, we see you, I see you, I hear you, I care about you. Here is, bread for today. Here is water for your children today. Just something to remind them that they matter. Someone somewhere cares about them, because we all want to feel like we matter. We all want to feel that love, that love. And sometimes it just takes someone from a distance saying, you matter, we care about you, we're praying for you. And even still, aside from praying, we are here with you. I may not sit in the dust with you, but my ears are willing to hear you cry without judging you because of your suffering. We have to be a part of our people, whether we like, regardless of our stance, because this is not about stand. It's bigger than what we stand for, or our conviction, what we hold. There is legitimate human suffering. We cannot deny it. And because it is real, we have to bring real, simplistic but real solutions to the forefront. We have to understand the dynamics, the socio-dynamics of conflict, and then the socio-dynamics of conflict resolution. And then just the fact that we're humans first before anything. We're humans, and humanity is in dire need of us as a people to step in for them. I think is vital.
Yes, he said we are humans first before everything. And the goal for every human being is to be happy. That is a goal for everybody, to pursue happiness. And because of what is happening, most of those people that are now called IDPs, refugees, widows, are basically unhappy because of the circumstances they find themselves. Of course, they have to find a way to. Somebody's calling. Let me tell them to call back. They have to find a way to survive. They have to find a way to live within the circumstances they find themselves, because they cannot just give up. Some people decide to give up and kill themselves and commit suicide, but others must find coping mechanisms, which you've given us a lot here. Finding somebody that they can relate to, talk to, reading to themselves, writing something down over and over again, belonging to some sort of community. Many examples you've given, doing some good deep breathing, relaxation techniques. Because again, some of these people will not have access to medication. Sometimes even medications may not be the best way to, as you said, to handle some of these conditions. Doc, I am going to have you talk about something that is slightly different, because there are some mental conditions that are not the traditional things that we see. There's bipolar, there's schizophrenia, and you can find that in our societies, in our communities. There are cases that people are just condemned because they think that they are crazy, and in the United States, in the developed world, some of those people get real treatment and they thrive in society. But in our neighborhoods where we come from, you find them on the street and they're called mumu or crazy people, or all those names that we give them. Talk briefly about that, so people understand the depths of what mental illness is.
All right, thank you. Yes, those are some of the ones that we don't tend to talk about, but they're real too. Bipolar is real, and schizophrenia is real. You see people sometimes who make poor decisions, have erratic moods. One minute they're okay, the next minute they want to fly off a handle. Sometimes some of them are even labeled back home as difficult children. That child is just difficult, they're just bad. But when the difficulty is coming from an imbalance in the brain chemical that causes them to react irrationally to things that, and I don't like to use the word normal, because normal is relative for each of us, but to things that what a conventional person on the street, how they would react is different from how a person with bipolar would react. They are usually irrational, impulsive, extreme in a sense. They take risks, high risk, risky behavior. Some of them, they even call them prostitutes. They go from one man to the other. Increased cravings for sex, multiple sexual partners, illicit drug use. You just see one day they're here, the next minute they go blow up 1 million francs or $1,000, things like that. One minute they're okay, the next minute they want to take their lives. Very manipulative. Very manipulative. That's one of the hallmarks too. They will manipulate people, situations, things, but it's just because their brain is different. The way their brain is thinking is different, which is why there's a therapy called dialectic behavioral therapy, just a big word for a way of thinking. It helps them to change, to start to catch triggers, to start to think different, to start to realize, okay, yesterday I did this, because sometimes it's a matter of not even recognizing consequences. And people like that get in trouble with the law. 1 minute they're in jail, they're bailed out, they're in jail again. So just helping them to start to recognize consequences and to change ways of thinking. Sometimes it requires medication and therapy, depending on the extent of the disease. There are people with bipolar. They say people like Mozart had bipolar. It helps you to become very effective, efficient. It empowers you. It causes you to have a drive for life. That's the good part. Now, that drive can be an overdrive, which can cause you to wreck, to crash and burn, which is problematic. And then there is schizophrenia. People hear voices, they see things, they hear things that others don't hear or see. Sometimes they even feel things, or just scattered thoughts. Sometimes their thoughts are scattered, their thinking pattern is scattered. They're saying this and going here and going there. Or it's a whole experience, not just the hearing, the seeing, and the feeling, but the experience of that person sometimes can be separate from the experience of reality, where they feel, some have conspiracy theory, they feel like someone's after them. And sometimes it's real though, because if you think about people who've experienced trauma and war, they've heard things and experienced it. Sometimes the least noise could feel amplified and magnified to the extent that it causes a deep fear. Now, there are those who have fear without rationale, which becomes paranoia. They just fear for no reason. There's no rational rhyme or reason to that fear. Or even delusions, where they have real conversations with people that are non-existent. And back home, we'll say, oh, that man the craze. Then we put them on the street. And then they start to pick paper. They're dirty, they're unkempt, They're eating from the trash can. Some even hear voices telling them to harm people, hear voices telling them to, they're being persecuted, go hide. And then we shun them because of their brain being different. But why don't we shun people with diabetes? It's an endocrine disorder, or high blood pressure, or cancer. Those are disorders that come from different organ systems. Schizophrenia, bipolar is from mental, but it's just a disorder, which just means that they're just thinking different. They just need our help. And when they get on medications, get on the right treatment, therapy, a lot of them, I have people that I treat who have jobs, families, living their lives because someone took the time. I have a coworker actually who had bipolar to the degree that she was wrecking every relationship in her life. And this is what she said. She was going from place to place seeking solution. Someone finally told her, "You need help," but in a nice, kind way. How would you feel if you woke up and you were living your best life? And she said, suddenly she realized, I'm not living my best life and I need help. And when she sought help, she was able to be a mother to her child, a grandmother to her grandchildren, and now she's married for the fourth time, but she's able to be a wife to her husband because someone was able to bring it to her attention that you need help. Everyone else was pushing her away, but someone finally said, you need help. How would you feel if you woke up and you were living your best life? And then she asked herself questions. Am I living my best life? And suddenly was like, oh, I'm not living my best life. Oh, let me do something about it. So there is hope, there is help. Even in our community now, I know a few people who treat mental illness. The extent is not as great as what we have here. But if people could just care enough to start thinking, last year this person was in school. Now they're walking on the streets talking to themselves. Something is wrong. Let's try to find out what is wrong rather than just push them and leave them on the streets to eat, dirt and bask in the dust. We can be each other's keeper.
We can be each other's keeper indeed. And education is the key. When we understand that these are illnesses, the same as you address high blood pressure, diabetes, we need to also think of mental health as disease that we should take, we should address, and that these are people that just want to be happy, and make sure that we embrace them and support them. Dr. Yaya, you keep on going in and out. I wanted to get your thought on this. We're going to be winding down soon. We have about maybe 11 more minutes to the end of the program. And Doc, is there anything that we've not pressed on that you think we should talk about? I'm not sure, because we've covered stress, depression, anxiety, PTSD, and briefly bipolar disease, schizophrenia. Is there anything that you want to share with us, especially our men population, the men of Southern Cameroons, because sometimes we think that men are free of depression, or they are the man of the household, so they are untouchable. I don't know if you have a special message for them.
Yes, thank you. That is so true. Our men are raised to be tough, act tough, and sometimes it's a good thing, but sometimes it works against us. Because I was having a conversation last year. I was out of town for a presentation, and it was an African community, and one of the men said, they asked the question, and his question was, how can we start recognizing that mental health is real as African men? And it comes through conversation, but it also comes through recognizing that your value as a man does not lie only, it lies in, but it doesn't lie only in how well you can provide. Because I think that is what is crippling to our men. A lot of our men think that their value is strongly embedded in how well they can provide. And when they cannot effectively provide, they are useless. And then they start to find ways of fighting back without realizing that sometimes even the pause is okay. It's okay to feel weak and to have someone else pick you up, a significant other pick you up. But it's also okay to verbalize that right now I am not strong enough to be the man that I ought to be. It is okay to verbalize. I have to repeat it again. It is okay to come out of your own mouth that right now I am not strong enough to be the man that I ought to be. They say men don't cry. It's okay for a man to shed tears sometimes. When you're hurt, it's okay to shed tears. It's okay to acknowledge that you're sad. It's okay to acknowledge that you're angry. It's okay to acknowledge that you're irritated by situations. It's okay to acknowledge that you're overwhelmed, you're maxed out, you cannot take it one more. You need to just go lay down and sleep. It's okay. People have had, aside from mental illness, some of our men have had cardiac arrest just sitting on a chair, coming home from work, they pass out because your mental well-being is at stake and it affects the whole person. You're overwhelmed, you're stressed, you're anxious, you're doing to the point where you crash and you burn. And it's okay to support your women in your community when they're depressed. Because, a lady once said, the men always say, hey, get over that thing. What is depression? Depression is real. It's okay. Even if you don't know that it's real, it's okay to find information. Now, be careful because Dr. Google tells the truth, but Dr. Google also lies. So it's okay to find information, seek wise information, but acknowledge that it starts by acknowledging that this thing is real. It is real. And it's killing people, it's plaguing people, it's destroying our community. And it's okay to even acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, you don't stop at the third drink or the fourth drink, you overdo to drink number 7, number 8. It is because you're hurting inside and you're trying to it's like taking a plaster, band-aid, covering that wound. The wound is still underneath, even though you put the band-aid and the plaster on top of it. So it's okay to acknowledge that maybe my drinking too much is because I am hurting. Maybe I lost my mother and I never grieved like I'm supposed to. We have to acknowledge. For our men, the message is acknowledgement. We have to acknowledge how we're feeling, number one, but we also have to acknowledge that these things are real. Even if we're ignorant of them, they are still real. Just because we're ignorant doesn't make them unreal. They are real. And once we start to acknowledge that they're real and we're feeling a certain way, we can do something about it. We cannot conquer what we don't acknowledge.
Great, great, great. I said we have a few more minutes, so we better get to questions and answers because we're going to be rounding up soon. So to the viewers, to the listeners, I think the phone number is not yet on the screen. So go ahead and put the phone number, but I'm going to just quickly say it just in case you can hear the number. It's 310-910-3079 and use WhatsApp, please. Call using WhatsApp.
Dr. Patience, you want to look on your screen, there's a number.
Oh, you have the number there already?
Look at above your head, above Dr. Bieber.
Okay. Oh, maybe it's because it's blocking my okay, I see that. Okay. All right, good. So go ahead, call us. We're waiting for calls, please.
I just request if I could call.
What did you say?
Can I call you?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm already in. Sorry for that arrogance. First of all, I'd like to thank your doctors for an amazing program, and it has really helped. It's a revelation, health-wise, if I must say. And I would say Dr. Biba, thanks for coming and producing this program, and I'm impressed. Your vocal simulation and precision in the education you've had this afternoon with us is exceptional. Thank you. I have a question that has to do with handling stress. We've heard, I don't know how medical that is, that some people eat a lot because they are stressed. Some to to handle stress, they want to do exercise. Now, how can sex, because I notice you, I don't know if it is intentional, none of you have mentioned that in this discussion. How can sex help to relieve stress, or how can sex cause stress? Whatever way, if it's going to relieve stress, how often should you have sex to help your stress? Thank
Thank you. That's a good question. It's an
Yeah,
interesting question.
good one.
Uh, yes, and it's true. Sometimes depression can make you to overeat or undereat, oversleep or undersleep. And if you think about the physiology of sex, it's like if you're exercising, you're working out, right? But you're working out, and when you're working out, it's physical, but it also affects your hormones, the discharge. When we start using the, I mean, for simplicity's sake, it affects your hormones, the good ones, the bad ones, and it causes there to be a balance in your thinking and even in your affect, how you present yourself. That would be a similar thing with sex. Now it depends, because you can, this could be a huge topic, because you can transgress to the area of addiction, which becomes problematic. And each person is different. There are people who just don't like certain exercises, and then there are people like, you do cardio, or you do stairmaster, or you do weightlifting. There are people who enjoy sex, and then there are those in the context, in the bonds of the right relationship, of course. Because if you start saying it's good, go do it, then you go do it with the wrong person, and then they hurt you and abandon you, and then your mental health, you get mentally, it worsens. So because it's not just a physical connection, it's an emotional connection, it's a spiritual connection. And so it's a huge topic which could take us hours upon hours. Sex in the right context is always healthy. In the wrong context, it can create even mental problems. You see young girls who are sex trafficked, and they are in jeopardy. And then you see young girls who go lay with the man because the man, or a young guy who lays with the woman because they said the right thing at the right time when they were vulnerable, and it causes them to have depression, anxiety, suicidality. So we have to be careful. And you can never tell a person once a week, twice a week. It depends on needs. There are people who work out once a week and that's all. There are people who have to work out 7 days a week. So it depends on the person's personality and their individual needs. I guess would be the quickest, shortest version of my answer to that question.
Dr. Yeah, you want to add something to that?
Oh, well done, Dr. Biba. Buddy. Anyway, like Dr. Biba said, that's a broad one. I don't really want to touch into that since we don't have much time. But I want to talk about something that Dr. Biba mentioned earlier, um, talking about the different spectra or spectrum of psychiatric disorders, I may say, or illnesses. And that actually talking about bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and anxiety, depression. I'll always, of course, to make it more sensible, related to our struggle. And I think this is really something, and thank you, Dr. Bieber, once again, for actually laying it out so nicely, and giving us potential, solutions, making suggestions on how to go about these issues. That also helps us, especially in the struggle, because sometimes being in the struggle, it's like a cult, so to say, because we are in our own caucus, so to say, and we're expecting perfection from each other. As the revolution is going on, we are also auto revolution, if I may use that word. We are having an internal revolution within the revolution. And of course, a lot of us didn't know ourselves before this revolution. And we've gotten to build a community that is new, of unknown persons, different personalities, some easy, some in quotes difficult, and knowing that these sometimes these people may not even be responsible for their actions, may actually generate some compassion from others. How we approach such persons, because of course in the struggle we do see extremes of character, and I think that just helps me personally, and I hope many others, maybe to be more tolerant and to be more understanding and not to be too judgmental, because we don't know what people are actually suffering from before even coming and joining the struggle. So thank you for raising that awareness. Is going to help us with our conflict resolution strategies. So I just wanted to emphasize on that aspect. And talking about some non medical or non pharmacological solutions or proposals. I'm not sure because I skipped out for a while. I'm not sure if Dr. Bieber mentioned this. The importance of sleep. Sleep is actually very, very absolutely important for mental health. And of course, we know that many of us do all sleep. Yeah, we have some who are guilty right now on this program. Many of us do all sleep for good reasons. Again, like Dr. Biba explained, we need a certain degree of anxiety to keep the motor running, but not to the point where we burn out and we crash. So it's very important for everybody to find that balance. You need to know yourself. You don't have to compete with anybody. And I think Paddy asked that question about sex in that context, but just talking about general coping mechanisms, you should know yourself and be honest with yourself. You know when you've overstretched, and you know when you need to pull back and take a rest. For example, I took a rest the past 3 weeks to 1 month. I'm sure I was missing in action. That could be read differently, but it is important because I feel energized coming back. I feel refreshed coming back. I was lacking in sleep, doing all these long nights, be it work related or be it struggle related, and otherwise. So let us not forget to take care of ourselves. Self care is very important. Self care is absolutely important. You need to know when you're running too fast, not to get burnt out. And it's okay, like Dr. Bieber said, to acknowledge and say, hey, I am feeling overwhelmed. I need a little break. No one's going to judge us for that. We want to have healthy people living in a great Amazonia. We don't want sick people. We don't want broken people. In fact, we don't want to go there as corpses. So please, that entails good eating, healthy eating, exercise, whatever your rate is, sleep. Sleep is so important. I mean, I know the effect on sleep, even just the way you look. You can look like a grandmother and you can look like a 17-year-old just based on how much sleep you get. So please drink lots of water, relax, Paddy. As for sex, that's just one aspect of it. But anyway, I don't want to touch that. That was a funny question, though, but relevant. So thank you so much. It was an honor being with you, Dr. Bieber.
Well,
We've learned so much from you. Thank you.
yes, thank you so much. I just want to throw a caution, by addressing what Paddy asked, that we already address this issue about how sex as a coping mechanism could also lead to problem because you have sex addiction. So again, the two doctors have already explained that it's all relative. It has to be done within a healthy context and not as a therapy per se. Because if you want to see it as a therapy, as if you're taking medication, you can get into trouble. It could end up backfiring because you'll feel that I must have sex every day, and and maybe you don't have the right relationship to have sex every day as a treatment, that can cause more mental problem. So with that said, I don't know if anybody else is listening out there that has a question. Please feel free to call in, because we're going to be tying down ending the show any moment now. Dr. Bieber has been grateful to stay. I told her 1 hour. I think we've gone past 1 hour, so I'm really grateful. So maybe before any other call comes in, maybe you can give your closing remarks, and if a call comes in, we can take the call. But if not, I think we've covered a lot. But before that, I just want to say that from what I've learned today, and this is speaking to everyone watching us and listening to us, there is someone out there that you are close to, that for whatever reason you don't see the person, you don't hear the person. We have to be our brother's keepers. You need to make that effort to reach out to that person, because I've heard of stories where neighbors have not reached out to their neighbors, and then one day you have a police car coming to that house, and the person has been dead for days or weeks, just because they have been so depressed and they had no connection to the outside world. So we need to know our neighbors, literally. We need to know our friends. We need to communicate, talk. And life is something that the grass is not always greener on the other side. You may think that you have problems, but until you talk to somebody, that person that you're speaking to may also having the same problems like you. And when you talk, then you relate and say, oh, it's all part of life. How do we deal with these problems? You know, life is full of problems, but God has given us means to handle those problems, and we should take advantage of it. Dr. Biba, maybe Dr. Yaya, please, your closing remarks, and then we'll have Dr. Biba give her closing remarks.
Oh, thank you so much, Mappy, for having me on board last minute. And thank you for always being on board, touching the things that really matter. Of course, I meet others who do a great job. Yes, I just want to conclude. I think what I said really should be my concluding statement, that we should consider that in the struggle, we have this is a reflection of the society as well. So the problems we have in the society, meaning the good, the bad, the ugly, we will find them in the struggle as well. And when we know that we are conscious of this, I think the expectations are also appropriate, and we don't run into tensions or too much tensions because we have the right expectations. On the other hand, we need to constantly keep teaching ourselves, raising awareness on how to try and reduce the stresses or the stressors that we can change, whilst we learn to deal with those we cannot change. There are so many coping strategies, as Dr. Bieber has listed a whole lot. And I think thirdly, concerning our struggle, we should also have that auto self-reflection, sit back and actually take an assessment of who I am in the struggle and who we are as a collective. If we have this exercise or, on a regular basis to sit and have a look, when you criticize yourself, you actually make fun of yourself, and you don't take it too seriously when somebody brings it up, because you already know that that is a truth. So if we can do that, it just humbles us, and we can take corrections kindly, and we can increase the harmony that we so badly need in already a very small group that is doing the great job of liberating motherland. So it's really a great honor being here on board with Dr. Biba. And thank you so much. Hope we see you some other time. Thanks, Mappy, for having me on. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. Dr. Biba, over to you, please.
Thank you, thank you. It's been such a joy. I love, love, love to talk about mental health because it's something that I have personally struggled with. So I encourage each and every one of us to not shy away from talking about mental health. To know yourself is to determine to be a better version of yourself. And so we have to know ourselves. And one thing to take away, know your triggers. What triggers you? How do you feel when you're overwhelmed? For me, if my ears start to flush, they become red and I feel heat, I know that I am maxed. I have to check out. What is it for you that is required? What is your trigger, number one? What is your maximum saturation point? You have to know it, because we, as people, of culture, we push ourselves to the limit and then we break and we're still pushing ourselves. It's okay to check out and say, okay, see you tomorrow, or see you next week, or see you next month, because we cannot have a healthy, economical, healthcare, political, any kind of system, even a ecumenical system of faith. We cannot if we're not mentally well. So let's take this as a challenge. This month of mental wellness, let's take it as a challenge to be mentally well by knowing ourselves, by admitting what we're dealing with, taking deep breaths. It's like ABC, admit, take a deep breath, and then celebrate. But also add a D, declutter. Admit what you're going through. Take deep breaths. We can't emphasize it enough. And then celebrate and declutter your heart and your head. Writing, talking. And then you can even add an E, engage someone into your journey. And F, faith. Add faith. Gratitude for G. So you could keep going and but let's not take it for granted, hear it and shove it to the side. If I'm better, I can help you get better. Let's start with ourselves, because a better individual leads to a better family, which leads to a better community. We cannot heal our community if we don't start by recognizing that there's a real problem, and the problem is only worsening. Every time we sleep and wake up, it gets worse. So we have to address it and we have to do something about it. And I can not thank you enough, Mape. 2 thumbs up for giving a voice to this matter. May God bless you.
Oh, thank you. 2 thumbs up to you, my dear sister, for accepting to come share this important topic with our people. I really, really appreciate it. I really, really thank you, because it helps when one of our own people, one of our own sisters is able to talk to us down to earth, lay whatever we need to know in just simple terms. That is the best thing we can do for our people. So as this month ends, you said something that I want to repeat: to know yourself better. Let us all try to know ourselves better and be the better and make ourselves better. When you know yourself, then you can make yourself better. And just to conclude, that we all are on a life journey that has problems. Everyone has problems, but let our problems not overshine our life. Let our problems just be a little part of our life. Let us be able to pursue happiness in spite of our problems. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'm sure we'll get you back to this program in the future. God bless you. And for our viewers and listeners, please stay tuned for our programs. Next week, The Horizon will come with another exciting program. And I will have another, I should not say yet. I'm still trying to confirm the guest, but The Horizon is there. We're staying the course. There has been a few things that have happened recently that we don't have time to talk about, but we should address it next Friday. Thank you so much, and God bless you all. Goodbye from The Horizon.
You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman. exclusively on ABC Amber TV.
Reading through the most recent press release by the interim government on its position on the issue of referendum to all Ambazonians, internal and external stakeholders. There are divergent views and proposals among stakeholders, both internally and externally, on how to resolve the ongoing conflict in Ambazonia that has resulted in an unprecedented 21st century genocide perpetrated by the regime of the Republic of Cameroon, also known as La République du Cameroun. Among these divergent views is a proposal for a referendum to be held in the territory of southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, former UN Trust territory under the British, to determine the future of Ambazonia. Cognizant of the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 1608 XV of 21st April 1961, granted independence to the UN Trust territory of Southern Cameroons and the subsequent non-execution of all the processes of decolonization prescribed therein, the interim government, representing the aspiration of an overwhelming majority of Ambazonians, has been clear and consistent in articulating the basis of the root cause of the Southern Cameroon's problem, which is the non-execution in its entirety of the above-mentioned UN resolution, thus paving the way for the annexation and recolonization of Southern Cameroons by La République du Cameroun in 1961. Therefore, complete decolonization is what we seek, and this involves complete restoration, absolute sovereignty, and recognition of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia as the 55th state of Africa. We believe a plebiscite, a non-binding survey of our opinion by the US, is an acceptable democratic process to ascertain the majority view of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. Since the last plebiscite of 1961, if there is any doubt about the majority position, we object to any proposed referendum on grounds that it presupposes falsely that Southern Cameroon is part of the Republic of Cameroon, also known as La République du Cameroun, and is seeking to secede as an independent country. We were granted independence in 1961. It was only the joining that did not take place legally, and the Republic of Cameroon withdrew from the Union project in 1984 when they reverted to their original name prior to 1961. We have never been part of the Republic of Cameroon, so we do not need a referendum to decide if we can separate from a non-existent union. Also, a binding referendum will exclude the genuine dialogues we need to address the root causes of the conflict, because it is based on winner takes all. We are not fighting to change the form of government in the Republic of Cameroon. We are not also fighting for constitutional changes within the Republic of Cameroon, French Cameroon. We are fighting against annexation. We are defending our restored independence. Annexation cannot be resolved through a referendum because it is either a right or wrong issue. Just as the solution of rape is not marriage, we do not need a referendum to tell right from wrong. We need the international justice system or a negotiated settlement. If the UN wants to serve the majority opinion on this issue, they should conduct another non-binding plebiscite in the Southern Cameroons, not a referendum. This is the threshold position of the people we represent. Therefore, any views or proposals that seek to mask the status quo of Southern Cameroon's colonial status under the Republic of Cameroon is far-reaching and do not represent the aspirations of the overwhelming majority of Ambazonians as far as this liberation struggle is concerned. Furthermore, the reasonable, immediate way forward to end this conflict, supported by the international community, external stakeholders, is a genuine, all-inclusive dialogue, mediated negotiation process. The interim government, under Dr. Sakho's leadership, has advocated for this process, which was spearheaded by the Swiss, but the Republic of Cameroon failed to commit. To concretely resolve this conflict, subsequently resolve the issue of the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia once and for all. Another plebiscite, preceded by internationally mediated negotiations, should be the right steps forward. This is signed Samuel Ikome Sakho, PhD, President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, former British Southern Cameroons, on the 23rd of April 2023. And with that, we've come to the end of this press release.